Today's video, solving two-step equations. So you'll notice a lot of similarities between two-step equations and one-step equations. The key difference here is that in a two-step equation, you will see that we have two operations in which we must use the inverse to solve. So let's look at our first example. We have 4x plus 7 equals 23. Now if we think about this, this is reading 4 times an unknown value plus 7 equals 23. So our first step is to use the inverse operation, but we are going to use the inverse operation of the number that is not directly associated with the variable. So we have 4 and x. Well, those are directly related because we're taking 4 times x, and then we're adding 7 to that. So in this equation, we are going to remove the 7 first. And to do the inverse of adding 7, we would subtract 7. So we will subtract 7 on both sides. So what I'm left with is now 4x equals, that would be 16. 4x equals 16. Well, now you should notice something familiar. This is a one-step equation, and we solve this one-step equation by doing the inverse of the operation that is left, and that's 4x, or 4 times x. The inverse of multiplication is to divide, so we divide by 4, divide by 4. So over here, my workspace is here. I'll move it over here. 4x equals 16. Whoops, I'm sorry. That should not be addition because that is not the inverse, but rather subtraction. All right, so dividing by 4, my value for x is 4. And I know that this is correct because I can take this back into my original equation, and rather than saying 4x, I can just substitute and say, well, what is 4 times 4 plus 7? And if that is equal to 23, well, then we know that we've solved this correctly. Now what I'd like you to do is try this problem right here. Take note of the two operations that are present in the equation because you will use the inverse of those to solve. So why don't you pause the video and try this question. All right, so looking at this equation, we have x divided by 2 minus 5 equals 25. So again, we're going to start with the number that is not indirectly or indirect association with the variable, and in this case it is the subtracting 5. So the inverse of subtracting 5, I will add 5, and whatever I do to one side I must do to the other, and I'm bringing down what is left because since I've added 5, that essentially cancels that 5 out, and I must do the same thing to the other side. So 25 plus 5 is equal to 30. And now I have a one-step equation. X divided by 2 equals 30. And the inverse of dividing by 2 is multiplying by 2. Whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. X is equal to 60. All right, let's do one other example, and then I will leave you to try the two your turn problems on your own. All right, here we have n minus 4 divided by 3 equals 11. This one is a little bit different than the problem where it says now try this, because we still want to take a look at what number is not directly associated with the variable. And in this case, the 3 is what is not directly associated with the variable, because I'm taking everything on the top divided by 3, not just the variable. So I'm going to use the inverse of dividing 3, which would be to multiply by 3. So I'm going to multiply by 3 on both sides. So then what I have left, once I've multiplied by 3, and I'm down here on this side now, I'm going to multiply by 3, and now I have n, not plus 4, minus 4 is equal to 33, because that is the product of 11 times 3. And then to solve this, I have, well, n minus 4 equals 33, and the inverse of subtracting 4 is to add 4. Therefore, n is equal to 33 plus 4, which is 37. And again, once you have your value for your variable, you can substitute that back in, and then you can check, and you do not have to wait until someone can tell you if you've solved it correctly. You will know. Now, I would like you to try these 2 your turn questions on your own, but I first need to talk about a typo. Surprise, surprise. Number 2, this 2 right here doesn't need to be there. I think I was trying to make number 2, the problem number 2, again. So the equation is just f divided by 3 minus 7 equals 15. So disregard that second 2 there. Go ahead and try these 2. Remember, as always, try them. If you have questions, we will talk about them tomorrow in class.